Hi, it's Hazel, and welcome to my channel, Hazel and Naka Design. Welcome to my new subscribers, welcome to my returning subscribers, welcome to those who don't know what they should do. Should they subscribe or shouldn't they? I say, please subscribe. Anyway, this video is going to be different. That's not the first time you've heard me say that. I've fallen into a trap or a rut of just watching, and I can't keep up with that anyway, watching friends and people I feel I know, watching their YouTube videos, which means that I'm probably missing out on some other good ideas. So one of the people that I started watching early on in my career was Barbara, 49 Dragonflies. So the other day, I happened to catch her doing a video on using up tea bags to make a snippet roll. And I thought, isn't that a clever idea? And of course, I had just as many or more tea bags than she did. And, you know, using them a little bit at a time, it's going to take forever, even if I never save another tea bag. So I, using my own stuff, obviously, replicated the idea. But I have to tell you, I do not think that this idea is worth the time and effort that I put into it. Now, I just wrapped it around this ribbon spool. If I had a nickel for every one of these types of spools that I threw away because I wanted to get rid of the packaging and I didn't appreciate how much room they were taking up, then I'd have a lot of money. However, my buddy Kim Newberg did a video on making spools like this. And I thought, well, my life is not long enough for me to make my own spools, but maybe I can at least stop throwing these away. Anyway, so it turned out that without planning it, without measuring, this works on here. Now, obviously, this should be decorated, but that's not the point of this video. Okay, so let's start unrolling this baby. And I thought that as I showed it to you, you can see it's pretty rough and ready here, that I would maybe do some clipping and snipping as I talk. Now, the premise of Barbara's video was to pick the rectangular tea bags that were relatively uniform in size. And I don't think I have any here, but clearly you know what I'm talking about. You're obviously not using round ones. You're using those that when you dry them, empty them, and open them up, give you a rectangle about yay big. So I had lots of them. I think she used 10 in her video, and I, of course, used more because, hey, if one is good, then 14 must be better. So I laid them out. She used matte medium to glue hers to overlap them about 1/2 inch and, attach them that way into a long snippet shaped thing. Now, I have matte medium, but honestly, it seemed like, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to make that mess? And I don't know, maybe because I tend to do these videos and craft at my desk, which is just an office desk. It's not a large work surface like some people have. And, I think that by the time I cover up the potential splash zone, that wouldn't it be easier just to use a glue stick? So that's what I did. So again, anytime you watch a video, and it doesn't matter whose it is, always, always, always adapt it to what makes sense based on your supplies and your setup and your temperament and all that stuff. So Barbara's was quite a neutral one. And I thought, well, that, I just about cut myself. That makes sense. Tea bags, even the fruity ones, tend to look fairly grungy and sort of like earth tones, you know, shades of brown and so on. That makes sense. I will measure this before, just so you get an idea of how long this thing is. It almost has its own postal code, it's so long. Anyway, so I gathered up a few items. Now, in her video, she was saying that in her, you know, her thought process was that because tea bags are so lightweight and, you know, delicate almost, that she was going to not make it heavy and bulky and so on. And she would, this is that little, you know, that little fold on the side of the tea bag, that she would stick with lightweight things. And honestly, oh, so that's the end of the roll. So I will measure it in a second. So I didn't put those things away because I thought, you know, maybe I want to really show them to you. Okay, maybe before I do that, let me get rid of these crumbs. And just quickly measure this. My my mat here is, well, I'll go by, I'll use 20 inches. Okay, 20. My snippet is 85 inches long. So what is that, 9 feet or so? Now, of course, so that that is going to explain, you know, why some of this took as long as it did. It's a big, long snippet roll. Okay, so let me show you. I had a brown paper bag that was ripped. I had some of this that was obviously a long ago, who knows what. It doesn't look like a gel plate. It looks like there's a bit of resist here. Don't know what that is. I also had many variations and colors of paper towels that, well, that's the same, that my tea bags had dried on. And this is just a fraction of them. Because really, how much, excuse me, how much of anything that I need? I also had a very fragile embroidery transfer, oops, like this practically just crumbles, with this burgundy, plummy, maroon colored ink. And I loved it. So I thought, okay, that'll be one way that mine will be different than Barbara's. And that didn't seem like enough. Oh, I put my big fat, and I mean fat, spool of this purpley, narrow, very narrow little string, for lack of a better word. And I also pulled out some stamps, one with the text and one with this row of ladies. This is Night Sky. This is Plum, I believe, in the Ranger, Archival Ranger series. Okay. Oh, and dyed paper doilies. So, I can't even remember what I did first. I think it was the darkest thing. Now, it's the reason it looks more subdued to you than this full strength color is because I had to knock it back with some stuff. So that was, I thought, well, how do you get interest in something if not through contrast? But contrast isn't always sometimes contrast can be too in your face. And then you will see that there's obviously lace on here. These are doilies that I cut up. Well, anything, first of all, I thought I only had this particular design. And you can see that that would have been an absolute nightmare to glue down because it's more open than it is crocheted. So I thought, well, let me sort of pin it to the paper, take it to the sewing machine, and just sort of go very slowly, spread it out, catch it with some threads, and that would be okay. Oh, another thing that I did, so in places I used, what is that archival color called? Wild Honey, I guess. That's a fleur-de-lis stamp there. Oh, and I also used purple on a very swirly one. And I used coffee stamp pad with another great big stamp. And I didn't have my favorite floral stamp. Oh, and I will get to this in a moment. You can imagine what I'm going to say, though. This kid is not impressed. So embroidery, stamped images. This was a little bit of trim that I put over those really dark pieces to knock them back. So some of the stamping I had done, like I showed you, these, and then glued this down because I thought this was going to be one way to help hold things in place. You know, probably a person who had a bit, well, I promised myself I would never deliberately mislead you. So that's why sometimes, you know, what may sound self-deprecating or self-criticism or whatever, also is a way to just tell you the truth from my perspective. Had I known how many man hours I would spend on this, I probably never would have started it. Were some of the issues of my own making? Probably. Like choosing such open weave doilies, for one thing. Not thinking through, and honestly, Barbara never said it, or if she did, I certainly didn't hear it, is that this is a very, very, very fragile thing. So all of these solid colored things you see at the back here are paper bag patches that I had to use to hold this thing together, because you can imagine stitching over lumpy doilies, stitching over these fibers. So, like, maybe it would be worth it doing it again, but using something a little substantial as the base and letting the tea bags just be, you know, maybe the next layer onto the base. You know, the thinness makes it kind of translucent, which is nice. But my goodness, we're past the point of it being translucent. We're to the point where we've got big holes. Now, I thought I had done all the patching, but when I discovered that I had this second style of doily that would fit in here quite nicely, I cut it up, tried to use up the whole thing, and went to the sewing machine and began sewing again. So, even though you can see my stitches are pretty big, maybe probably my biggest setting ever, despite all that, it's only a tea bag. So is it any wonder that with all that stitching, I don't even know if Barbara stitched hers, to be honest. Is it any wonder that I've got holes left and right? I'll have to trim whatever's sticking beyond that because... Anyway, so some of these patches I've done since my last attempt to fill it because there's no stitching across it. So some of these patches have been done after my last trip to the sewing machine. Oh, here's another one that needs something. So, I think, because of course this is so darn long, I cannot get an overall look at it. And maybe it's foolish to try because really, not more than a few inches would ever be used in any one project. But I still wanted to, here's something too. I wanted to get the overall feel for it. Had I sort of divvied up my available supplies somewhat evenly, did it look balanced from every standpoint? So at some point yesterday, I laid it on the floor and I thought, I'm kind of starting to like this. And I think, here's another weak spot. I think that what tipped the scale, and again, just because I'm saying that I've grown to like it somewhat, doesn't mean it was worth all the time I spent. Literally hours and hours and hours. So I think what made it more acceptable to me was the fact that as I looked at it, as I walked the length of it and looked at it, it was that quintessential color scheme that I've talked about before that is found in nature, blues and browns, sand and water, sand and sky. Here, that's a weak spot too. So I'm glad that I added teal, added that color I love, which is nightshade. Where was I going to put this? I guess here. The thread mimics the color of the embroidery pattern. That and that. I think I need to put something here too. In other words, should have had something strong. Might as well put this whole thing down and not have this so patchwork-like. So I don't know if you can see them. I kind of got pushed aside here. as I was waiting for some of this to dry yesterday, I started looking through my postage stamps. And I have many. And I thought, well, if I pick through the stamps, pick a variety of sizes, pick colors that repeat what is already in the snippet roll, maybe that will help give me a focal point. Because frankly, typically a focal point would go on after, that'd be one of the last things to go on. But yet, for some reason, I don't know if it was to change things up or if I had momentarily lost my mind, was running a fever or something, I put those stamped ladies, which I think you'd have to say that, they kind of, they become, I think, the focal point just because they're humans. And, we like to put ourselves number one, certainly over symbols and text and stuff like that. Anyway, because I had done that early on in the process, they kind of became lost other than showing up. Which way? Okay, here, yeah, I had this all facing myself. So this is bottom, this is the top. I think if they were more inanimate kind of objects, typically I would change things up so that there is no top and bottom, but I'm just going to glue this down. Now, I also had an issue. With what did I have an issue with? I had so many issues, it's hard to keep them all straight. Oh, when I was sewing on these fill-in pieces of lace, like you can see that in places there's really nothing holding them down. And then I had done the bigger pieces and realized that, oh, I still have a few scraps here. So then those I just glued into place with Fabri-Tac. Time to put some more glue in here, and then you don't spend quite as much time waiting for it to drop. So some pieces really don't have any sewing holding them down. But I started to say, and maybe, well, I don't know how. Oh, I should do this too. I'm sorry. Or maybe you got kind of an overall feel for it as I was trimming off those edges. I was going to show you one more time, but that's probably unnecessary. Anyway, so not that I'm going to get much of a view sitting here in this narrow little window, but oh my goodness. I was going to see if I like the idea of adding some stamps. And maybe we'll just think about an area this size that sort of fits on this. I think I'm going to fold this up. Number one, to help protect it maybe, and also to just get it out of my way. Okay, so what I'm thinking is that we could try a few. I was going to put this with my Canada stuff. What I could do is try a few of these stamps. Now, the issue, of course, becomes, is because these stamps aren't under the lace, so to speak, and haven't been, covered or stamped on or whatever, are they going to pop right off the page, so to speak, and be far brighter than, like, unless I what's the word? Unless I ink them up, you know, darken them up. That's not supposed to be there. This looks pretty bright, pretty white, pretty... And I wish I could hear what you're saying and what you're thinking. Now this turns out that it's rather a short little piece to experiment on, because see, these two are seeming very big now. So I have fewer choices to work with. And of course I've got, you know, many more stamps I could easily find. Look at this beautiful envelope. Do we know what year this was? Not really. Can't make out what that is. That's beautiful, though. So maybe those round US stamps, you know, maybe if I sort of smudged up the edge of that white, maybe that would be a little easier to work in here. Oops, no, let's put them upside down. And again, because I have so many loose things, I guess I could partially tuck them underneath if I thought it was getting to be too much of don't really have that color in here. This one I could probably tear in half. That's kind of big. I thought I had done a better job picking stamps, to be honest. Look at that cute dog. Don't really like using what's probably a warplane, but 1969. So, I don't know. I guess I will, and because I can't hear what you're saying, and as you're weighing, look how nicely that came off. As you're weighing in on my question, as do these stamps help or hurt my cause? I might just spread this monster thing out on the floor again. Spread out some of the stamps and just see how I feel as I look at it from time to time. Because honestly, I just don't know at this point. And frankly, I don't want to do something that's going to cause me even more work to, you know, to tone them down or put a bit of gesso on the stamps, or like, I guess what I'm saying is I'm at the end of my rope with this thing. I could get more earth tone ones, I guess, that would... Let me stand up and see if I can tell anything that way. I guess the stamps are kind of nice in that it does echo the colors that are in the project. Okay. I honestly, I really don't ever try to influence you, you know, unless it's something I feel very strongly about. And, you know, it's not a taste thing, it's a common sense thing or whatever, like back up your computer, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. You know, no sane person is going to argue against that. But honestly, I think this is one of the first videos that I've ever done where I am going to try to influence you and say, don't do this. Save yourselves. Don't do this. Pick a sensible backing, then use tea bags. But don't try this flimsy. Certainly didn't work in my case. Now, I can't remember whether Barbara added any actual doilies. Like, I know she used paper ones, but you know, maybe I painted myself into a corner. By choosing this doily, I really forced myself to have to sew it in order to properly anchor it. Which, of course, the more I sewed it, the weaker it became. So, would things have turned out differently if I hadn't added the doily, the actual crochet doily? Perhaps. So, again, as always, the choice is yours. Just be aware that the way I did it was a long and painful process. Now, again, by the time I've added these stamps, because it almost looks like I'm leaning that way, by the time I've added these stamps and put more time into this, this could end up being my favorite thing since sliced bread. I don't know. At this moment, I am one frustrated woman. So I think I'm going to stop there because obviously I've made my point. You got my point. And what is the point in carrying on? So anyway, I'm sorry if I demoralized you in any way. But yeah, that's how the cookie crumbles here in the studio. Okay, guys, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.